This is Erik McKinney, joined by Greg Katz and Marc Kulkin, and welcome to Five Things from USC's 37-14 win at Colorado. Guys, we'll jump right into it. Our first thing, as always, player of the game. Greg, go ahead. Your player of the game.
I have to go with two. You can't have one without the other. Kedon Slovis and Drake London. I think they played as though they were billed in the preseason, and I was happy for both of them. They've certainly had Kedon especially has been through a little trials and tribulations here. So he looked like the Kedon that we had seen from a couple of years ago. And, I think he was 19 of 29 for 276 yards. He looked in control. I think he got sacked twice, and which is pretty good for him. And he didn't seem to get harassed too many times. And, he had time. He got outside the pocket. And, I think they really helped him. I thought that Drake London was, what can you say? I mean, if the guy's not in the Bolitnikov conversation, they shouldn't even have the award. I would say, and I was talking with a friend of mine who called me during the game, and the truth of the matter is if London could play another year, a senior year, you would say he could threaten the image of Keyshawn Johnson in a way, because that's how good he'd be. We'll not know how good he'd be as a senior, but we really do know how good he is as a junior. And I'm excited for him. I think he's a stud.
Marc, go ahead. Your player of the game.
Yeah, on offense, I think Greg pretty much covered it. I'm going to go with Drake Jackson. That defensive play that he made on the first series coming out of halftime, that kind of rejuvenated the team and kept the spark going. And they're able to kind of rely on the run game in the second half a little bit. So for me, Drake Jackson, Greg, you talked about, Kedon Slovis and the other Drake. So I really think we need to really focus on the defense for this game because they were the catalyst to keep things going.
Did I say Drake Jackson?
You said Drake London. I said Drake London.
Oh, okay. I sometimes I get my Drakes mixed up.
Yeah, and on this game, you guys are both right. It's the two Drakes, Drake London, Drake Jackson. Absolutely, those would be the guys I'd go with. I'll say Keontae Ingram. That was a big fumble and something that he would tell you, that can't happen again. And so I understand that that's part of it. First USC player with a 100-yard game on the ground this year. I think that's big. Had that big run all the way down to the 5-yard line. I believe a 53-yard rush for him. Looked good, kind of set the tone for the running game. So I'll go with him. But again, that's only because you guys took Drake London, Drake Jackson, who were clearly, the top guys for offense and defense. Marc, let's start with you on this one. Go to our second thing, the play of the game for you.
I don't want to repeat myself. However, I'm going to go back to the Drake Jackson. Actually, you know what? I'll give him a second play. How about the strip sack fumble recovery? I mean, he had an interception. He almost had. How did they clarify that? Was it a fumble recovery? Is that an interception?
Fumble recovery. Tuli Tuipulotu. Yes. With the sack fumble, Drake Jackson fumble recovery.
He almost had another interception with the ball going through his hands. Drake. Again, that play coming out of the second half was huge. Because momentum was on Colorado's side going into halftime. They're getting the ball to start the second half. That was a huge play, especially for a team whose confidence might be a little shaky right now. It's huge.
Greg, go ahead. Your play of the game.
Well, my play of the game happened in the first half, and it wasn't at the end. My play of the game was the great high point catch that London made. I think it was 32 yards in that vicinity. And I thought the catch was important because, number one, it established London was not going to be stopped, that SC could do that all day. I think it really took the sails out of Colorado's defense, just the fear of it. I think it really injected enthusiasm into the USC offense because, let's face it, if you can't stop Drake London, you're in a lot of trouble unless you've got superior talent and a superior offense, which, of course, Colorado did not have. But I thought that even though it wasn't a touchdown play, it set the mood to me that, and then of course London did it down, with other catches were just as spectacular. The one-handed catch in the end zone was like, are you kidding me?
Look, I'm jumping in because you took mine. You didn't pick the touchdown. I'm
actually clairvoyant, and I was reading that, and I didn't want to give you your chance to be pat yourself on the back.
Yeah,
Erik, take the London hurdle play.
You can expound on it even better than I can.
Look, let's just here's a hat. We'll go ahead. We'll pick a Drake London play out of the hat, and that'll be our play of the game. It's only 1 yard, the touchdown catch. He said after the game, I don't know what I was thinking. It's something where your body takes over, and all of a sudden, it's in your hand. Kind of that sort of play. It's what you expect from Drake London, and you're still, the fact that we get to watch him this year is just kind of a pleasure covering USC football and being able to see that. Again, it goes down as a 1 yard touchdown pass. It's not something that explodes out of the box score at you, but what a play and what an example of kind of what he can do and really what we've seen since the spring through fall camp and every time he steps on the field. He's played through injuries. He's playing through double and triple teams. He's playing through times where he gets nicked up and is just getting piled on by 5-6 guys on a play, and he just produces, play in, play out. It has been really fun to watch him go.
Yeah, and to add to that, because I'm going to actually change my play to the London hurdle that he had down near the end zone. And the reason I'm bringing this up is we were kind of sitting close to a couple of NFL scouts towards our end of the press box. And right after that play, I won't mention which one, but the guy literally stood and goes, "That's an X receiver, and I'm leaving right now." I mean, that's how impressed he was after that play. So, Erik, you talk about how Drake just constantly takes abuse. He will actually put himself in harm's way to get extra yardage. I mean, that's how much of a competitor he is.
Fun kid to watch this year for sure. Greg, let's go. Third thing, we'll start with you, and we'll go with what you expected to see in this game, and it did. It played out the way you thought.
Well, I expected USC to bounce back. I didn't know to what degree they would bounce back because I didn't know what start they would. I felt if they got into a slugfest with Colorado, it could get kind of dicey. But it seemed like they came out of the chute ready to go. They made the statements in the first quarter and in ensuing quarters because let's face it, today was a crossroads game. I guess you could say from here on, every game's a crossroads. They can't afford another Pac-12 loss. So they rose to the occasion. Credit to Dante Williams for having them ready to play. A credit to the team for looking inside itself to bounce back and to never take the foot off the pedal. In fact, I thought it was kind of interesting near the end of the game. They still had Slovis in there all the way to the end. I don't know whether I would have done that per se, but you know what? They did it, and they wanted to make a statement, and it happened. By the way, who is that wonderful celebrity that just walked in? Is that who I think it is?
Just win, baby.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. It's good to see that you're part of the group.
Mark, let's go ahead. You up in the thing you expected to see, and it played out that way.
I anticipated them looking to stop Colorado's run game because I think anybody who watched the game saw Colorado's passing game isn't probably their strength, if I'm going to put it nicely. Stop the run, make Colorado beat you through the air, and I think USC's defense played that role perfectly. And they gave a couple big plays. Penalties obviously were an issue, but other than that, yeah, everyone's going to say, well, it was just Colorado. And granted, yes, Colorado has an offense that needs some assistance. But you know what? A good defense will make a bad offense look crappy. And USC's defense did that today. So give them credit there.
Yeah, I'll be one of those guys. I expected Colorado to just be the basement of the Pac-12 and be that bad. And that's what we saw at times where the offense just could not get going. Again, USC was on the other side causing that. The one thing I'll go with for a USC perspective is trying to find that number 2 receiver. And there's a bunch of different ways to kind of define that, but who's going to be the guy that takes some of the pressure off Drake London? And I think you're starting to see Michael Trigg potentially be that guy and play that same role that Drake London did as a true freshman. Trig gets the first play of the game directed at him, and that's something we've seen a couple times now where, hey, maybe you get him into the feel of the game, let him get his hands on the ball, take a hit, and get going. And then the long touchdown play where he goes up and does his best Drake London impression to go over a defender, catch the ball, and get in the end zone. Just the 2 catches. So you're still trying to figure out, Taj Washington with 3 catches, Gary Bryant with 2 catches. So there isn't that guy who's, just under Drake London in terms of if Drake has 9, your next guy has 6 or 7. You're still kind of figuring out who's going to step up consistently in that number 2 role. I think I thought coming into this game it would be Trig, and that's kind of what we saw early on, trying to get him involved a little bit going forward. Greg, let's go back to you, our 4th thing. And this is maybe the surprise, the thing that surprised you from this game. And again, in a game where expectations were that USC would come in and win, and that's what happened. Let's see if we can find a surprise.
Well, to me, the surprise was the running game, to be honest with you. It's not that I never thought they couldn't have a running game, but would they be committed to a running game? And I really felt today they really decided we're going to run the football. And I thought it was a little bit better play selection, to be quite frank with you, on Graham Harrell's. I don't know whether the interim head coach said, we got to run the ball more. And, the term smash mouth was used by Dante Williams. That kind of means to me, we want to test things out. And I was surprised at the effectiveness of it. I was surprised by the commitment to it. They had 218 yards rushing. I think that's a statement right there. This I will say. Now, Colorado, obviously, offensively is terrible, horrible. Okay. But their defense has been respected, and SC broke their back with this running game because they just couldn't pin their ears back and go after Slovis time and time again. One thing I don't know if how many people, other than maybe people on the coaching end of it, would see it, but SC started off in a pistol formation and then went to offset backs. It seemed to give Colorado's defense a little bit of hesitation. The pistol is basically the I formation without a fullback in a shotgun. And I thought that when they lined up there and then they shifted out of it, it caused confusion, I think, especially with Nate Landman, the great middle linebacker of Colorado, seemed to be unsure of where he was going to attack. So by and large, I was surprised by the running game and the commitment to it and its execution.
Mark, go ahead. Your surprise from today.
After last week, I was surprised of how undisciplined the team was with their penalties. I know Dante's doing what he can in the limited amount of time he's been in charge, but that's something they're going to have to rectify. To finish the first quarter, I think there were five penalties for 90 yards, 60 yards, whatever that number was. They had too many. So they need to get that cleaned up because it literally takes a good offense from being great. I mean, when you have 2nd and 1, and then you have a play that doesn't work, and then the following play has a penalty, it's these types of things that kind of snowball, and it kind of lends some credence to what Graham Harrell talks about team executing. But at the same time, I think there's a snowball effect because it's part of the play calling as well. So there's a rhythm that cannot generate itself from start to end. So if they can clean up their penalties, I hope, that maybe, this team will be competitive throughout the season.
I'm right in lockstep with that. That was mine. I assumed, my thought was when Dante Williams takes over, that sort of, the guys would want to play, I guess, more discipline for him and kind of figure that stuff out. For me specifically, it's the special teams penalties that keep coming up time and time again. And right off the bat, Gary Bryant puts together what looks like it's going to be a big punt return and get things going at the top. And then that comes all the way back. And that, it's only 10 yards, but that's a huge field position penalty too when you see where they could have gone. So again, just shooting yourself in the foot kind of over and over. There's an offensive pass interference. There's late hits. Raylan Goforth is gonna miss the first half of next week's game because he's ejected for targeting. So just those kinds of things still sort of sloppy at this point in the season. I will say, if it happens again next week, that is not going to be one of my surprises, because at this point you anticipate it until they can fix it. Now I think going forward, and again that takes us to our fifth thing, and we're talking going forward. The biggest takeaway, Greg, we'll start with you. Biggest takeaway from, again, USC's 37-14 win against Colorado.
Well, the biggest takeaway is that they didn't lose another conference game. The biggest takeaway was that they still have hope. I think it's remote. Because two of those conference losses were to North Division teams, but they still count. Okay, they still count. So I think that the future is going to be next Saturday. It's an elimination game, I think, for USC. If they lose to Utah, they're done as far as the South Division, in my opinion. Utah maybe could sustain because SC's played more conference games than everybody else up to this point. But I think this game propels them into the future of next week, saying we still have hope. As long as there's hope, there's hope. Because after next week, then they have the bye, and then they'll go to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame will be all upset because they lost to Cincinnati. So Notre Dame will say, look, we may not be going to the national championship, but we're still going to beat our rival USC. And hopefully, when SC gets the next 2 or 3 weeks, improves, but I'm like both of you guys. I am concerned about the now pattern of behavior of penalties. It's no longer, it was just a game. No, it's increasing every week, and some of the penalties offensively, and then I'll end with this, are coming from veteran guys, and that is a little bit disturbing.
I think that's the sign of their pressing, Greg. At least that's how I would interpret it when it's coming from the veteran leadership.
Or go ahead, your biggest takeaway from this game.
They came out on the road. They got the win. They looked decent enough. You get past their mistakes, their issues. You can see that there's a chance for this team. I don't want to get ahead of myself. They've yet to, win a conference game at home. They've shown they can do it on the road. So let's take that next step. Let's, defend the Coliseum. Let's go 1-0 at home. That's Dante's favorite thing to say at the end of every press conference. 1-0. Great. Let's defend the home turf now.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat a little bit coming on the back of you guys. I'm going to say there is no biggest takeaway. I think there are tiny takeaways where, like everyone has mentioned so far, you were able to stop the run well enough against a Colorado team that wanted to run the ball, and then you were able to run the ball against a Colorado team that has typically done okay stopping the run. So the two things that Colorado does best, USC is able to come in and clearly kind of get the better of them in, and those are things that USC had not done well. So if maybe it's not turning the corner, maybe it's peeking around the corner, because like we said, Utah's up next, and they've kind of typically been tough with those two things too. So you're gonna get, this is not a Utah team that we've seen the past few years, but it's a step up from Colorado. So you don't want to say, oh, everything's fixed, here we go, let's run into Utah, Notre Dame, the end of the year kind of schedule gauntlet at this point. But again, you pick yourself up after Oregon State, you move on, and you got to figure out how to play at home right now, because it's 2 home games in a row where you have just you've not shown up and gotten run out. So that's sort of the takeaway, is what comes next. Again, I don't think there's anything you can say definitively, oh, USC got this fixed and here we go, and firing on all cylinders, because it is Colorado, but it's what they needed to do. And I think everyone's kind of in agreement with, you need to come out of here with a decisive win, and you got it, and we'll see what they can do next week at home against Utah. So that's our look, our 5 things, looking at USC's 37-14 win over Colorado. For Marc Kulkin, for Greg Katz, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.